and I would invite those parties that are genuinely concerned about water quality to support that bill so that national requirement can come in place.
Question number 10. David Seymour.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for the Environment and reads as follows. When will the Resource Legislation Amendment Bill be ready for committee stage?
Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
It is ready now. My ambition would be to have the bill passed through next month, but ultimately the legislative priorities are determined by the Leader of the House.
Supplementary question. David Seymour.
How does the Minister think the public will interpret the fact that it's become ready within 2 hours of Act and United Future challenging the government to support its amendments and put the bill up after 2 years of wrangling with the Māori Party?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I've sought to get the support of all of the government support parties. The difficulty is that ACT has said the bill does not go far enough. The United Future Party has been concerned that the reforms go too far. As a consequence, we've negotiated in good faith with the Māori Party. We have a good bill, the most substantive reforms to the RMA in 25 years. And if actually we want more houses built, we want more jobs, we want better environmental control, then parties will support that bill.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question. David Seymour.
Did Prime Minister at the time, John Key, not tell the Minister a year ago that the offer made today was on the table and has been the entire interceding period?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I've been very aware of both the ACT Party and the United Party's positions. They've actually been opposite. That is, that the United Party has been concerned that the reform has gone too far. The ACT Party has been concerned that it's gone not far enough. This is a centre-right government, and I actually think the reform and the agreement that we've reached with the Māori Party is a good way in which to advance this important reform.
Order.
Point of order, David Seymour.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table a letter from the ACT Party and United Future parties to John Key, Prime Minister at the time, offering a united front last March.
Order. It doesn't need further description. I'll put the leave sought to table that particular letter. Is there any objection to it being tabled? There is not. It can be tabled.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question. David Seymour.
How does the Minister believe his backbench colleagues will react to the fact that it's taken 2 years to pass a substantially watered-down Resource Management Act reform bill that includes mana whakahono rohi requirements that duplicate requirements already in sections 6 and 7 of the bill?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Well, the provisions in 6 and 7 are very different to the iwi participation arrangements. I would remind the member that prior to this term of Parliament, the government put out an options paper on the RMA, and the iwi participation agreements were in the government's original proposals. They were there before we entered into discussions with the Māori Party, and they are there because the obligations to consult with iwi are already in the law, and it is our view that the iwi participation arrangements will ensure that occurs in a more effective way.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question. The Honourable Peter Dunne.
Mr Speaker, can the Minister recall when he last had discussions with either the ACT Party or the United Future Party? Was it 2015 or 2016?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I can very well recall that my office sought to seek a meeting with that member, and over 5 months the member could not find time. Frustration that was shared by my colleague Amy Adams, the previous minister. As a consequence, the government entered into an agreement with the Māori Party, and we are a government that acts in good faith for our parties, and that is why we will continue with our agreement with the Māori Party.
Supplementary.
Order. Order. Supplementary question. David Seymour.
Does the Minister believe that anyone will take seriously his claim that this Resource Management Act amendment is more substantial than any of the previous 17 that have been made over the past 26 years? And in particular, does he still stand by his statement that, quote, "There's no question in my mind that we have to break through the stranglehold that the existing legal metropolitan urban limit has on land supply if we want to make housing more affordable"? And if so, given his bill does not contain... We're now getting to 3
supplementary questions.
Well,
the Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
When we get to the committee stages, I'm looking forward to pointing out to that member the very specific provision in this bill that introduces an obligation on councils to provide more land for housing and industry.
Question number 11. Order. Question number 11, Porto Williams.